The following may contain language and subject matter which is only appropriate for some audiences. But since we're not very discriminatory here, everybody's welcome to listen. Hey everybody, thanks for joining us here on the Low Fact Podcast. We'll go straight into the topic, and we were talking before we started recording, and Andy has shown himself to be a person of a gargantuan intuition, I suppose.
Big word.
Because the actual topic is, what do you do about institutions that claim one thing, or that not necessarily claim one thing, but kind of give off the image of doing one thing, but aren't really doing that thing,
and selling it falsely.
I guess, yeah, that's the way to put it. So, and what brought this thought to mind was a few weeks ago I was reading something about the New York Times bestseller list, and I had thought that the New York Times bestseller list was something that the New York Times newspaper would just kind of compile, right? They'd look at the books sold and say, these are the ones that are the best sellers. I mean, that's kind of what you can, that's what you would kind of infer.
That's what it's freaking cool. It's called the bestsellers list.
Right, that's what you would infer from the title, but Andy had a different thought. Can you repeat what you thought your thought?
My thought has always been about the New York Times bestseller is that they really don't look at the projected sales of the books or the most popular books. They look at books that they like. Like, I like this book because of the way the writer writes, or I'm friends with the publisher. It's more of them trying to sell the way they like books to the masses. And since they sell it as best-selling books, people assume, oh, everybody's reading that. When really, it's just the New York Times spouting their opinion and pushing the books they like to everybody.
Editorializing, essentially.
Yeah, essentially.
And well, it came out that that's what the New York Times does for their bestseller list. And so that brought to mind the question, okay, so we have a lot of news outlets. We have a lot of information thrown at us. And the purveyors of that information generally claim that they're throwing out facts, that they're throwing out objective facts. What happens when you find out they're not doing that? How should we deal with that? We as the plebs.
Well, then they lose all credibility at that point.
Completely? So now you'll never read any New York Times editorial.
I don't look at the New York Times bestseller list, but I mean, that is a big lie. Calling it a bestsellers list, that's an outright lie from what you guys are telling me, because it's not about sales at all.
Well, it's kind of like the whole trending news thing, right?
So now who uses the bestsellers list? If a book is a bestseller list, does it go out to all the libraries? Does the book get a whole lot of coverage and kind of stuff that it wouldn't normally get?
You can sell the book saying, "Oh, I was on the top. I was on the New York Times best-selling list," and like the Oprah sticker, they could put that on their books, and it's a good way to sell it. That's why I always thought there's got to be a buddy thing, because when you get on that list, it helps your book sell more.
Yeah, but the Oprah reading list never claims in the Oprah list that it's a bestseller.
I like the Oprah sticker because it's straight up. She just likes this book, and there's no other reason. So I kind of like it more. It's a little more transparent. With the New York Times,
well, it's honest at least.
Exactly. So I respect it a little more. God bless Oprah, but the New York Times.
God has blessed Oprah, actually.
Very much.
So that just makes it because I've seen, just boring the listeners for a second, I've seen it in agreements, like legal agreements, where if something's like on the New York Times bestseller list, it gets like extra money, right?
The writer will get extra money for something.
And like, so you're essentially promising to give extra money to a book that isn't a bestseller, potentially.
But it's on the New York's list.
So I'm like, that's crazy.
Well, maybe if you want to be more objective about it and say, I'm going to give you more money for this book, if you happen to sell more books,
Yeah.
then it would be a totally different list.
So it shouldn't be New York Times bestseller. It should be
Well,
sales, some other sales thing.
Maybe, but I'm just saying that the New York Times bestseller list is supposed to be, or they claim that it's an editorial list and not a factual list. In which case, I'm like, well, why do you call it the bestseller list?
If you had called it New York Times best top picks, then
Right.
I'd be okay
The
with
New York
it.
Times
But
editorial
it's
boards,
top picks or
Exactly.
favorite books of the month. Had you labeled that, there'd be no issue. But you said bestseller, and from any news outlet, there's going to be a bias. You should already accept that there's going to be a little conflict of interest with any information you receive.
They should call it something different.
Well, but for news folks, the bias is not.
Not as obvious.
Well, no, it's not like. I don't think it's purposeful.
It just happened to be there. Subconscious.
Yeah, because certain types of people are attracted to certain careers. And a career in journalism, for lack of a better term, I don't know what's happened to it lately, but people that are into journalism there's a certain type. So, if you say that the media is biased, I mean, well, yeah, because there are certain types of people that want to go into media. Just like there are certain types of people that want to go into healthcare. You would think, unless, not all generalizations are exact. They don't apply to all people, but you would think that most people opt for a healthcare career because they want to help people, not because they want job security and lots of money, which is also, there.
A benefit.
But no one ever says, I want to be a doctor because I want to make tons of money.
Or I hope not.
And I want to have a hot wife.
But
that you never get to see because you work 20-hour days.
But that's kind of what is there, though. I mean, I don't know how big the pull towards economic security is there to be in medicine, or that used to be. I don't know about these days with all the stuff going around.
Yeah, it's a rough one.
But and that goes on for people. Why? I mean, why are we so afraid to actually speak the truth? Not your truth, but the actual truth. That's a term that I don't like, and I don't want to talk about it because we're going off topic. But
does it trigger you?
No. So that's the question. That's the question for, I guess, we're the three representatives. Well, I'm the representative of the plebs. You guys just happen to.
What are we?
Y'all are blue bloods. I told you.
Bloods, goddammit. I have no royalty.
Prince Flores.
In our society today, you guys are about as blue of blood. You guys come from as aristocratic of a background as I can think of.
Allegedly, I claim nothing.
But well, you don't have to claim anything; they claim you. So that's my question. I mean, what do we, the individual, the unconnected, the unwashed masses, the plebs, the folks that no one really cares about unless they're using us? Oh, yeah, that's what I was thinking. What do we do about our institutions that, aren't necessarily doing what they claim to be doing?
Well, don't blindly follow any institution. Like, always try to take all news with a grain of salt, because even if they don't mean to be biased, there's going to be a bias there. So I think having a bunch of different sources would be helpful. That way you don't get just one perspective or one view on.
But you do get one view on that.
If you get multiple views.
I hate to jump in on that.
Well, he's raining on your parade right
nowadays.
Do it.
Nowadays, that's what's happening.
You get one view and that's it?
Well, one story gets broken by a bunch of outlets. That's one view.
Wait, they're all if different outlets do the same story?
Yeah.
But they're
you're talking about monopolies.
Well, think about the
think
about the Facebook beat.
Ugh, that's a garbage place for news.
I remember years ago it was really weird watching any news outlet, local or national. They would have some story that I had seen on a Facebook feed not too long before. So, and they're just kind of repeating it. So there's no, that to me is one story given by a whole bunch of outlets. So, I don't think it really matters that it was a corporate news person or a blogger If they're all throwing out something that was trending, quote unquote, on Facebook, then that's just one story.
But they all view it differently. Like Alex Jones and CNN have the same story, but they really say it differently. It is one story, but they're going to perceive it differently. So,
Can you give me an example?
Like anything Obama did, if you ask Fox, he's Nazi Hitler. But if you have CNN, he's like the fucking second coming. So it's the same guy. They just view him so differently, and they report him so differently. But it is the same guy. So I see what you mean by the one story, but they're going to report that story differently. No one's going to say the same. So you have different perceptions, but for one subject.
Do you remember the whole Fast and Furious type thing?
Yeah, with the whole
with the guns?
weapons found in Mexico,
yeah.
like that.
Yeah. So did you happen to, searching your memory banks, did you happen to see a differing?
Well, CNN
reporting?
downplayed it, and Fox News made a big deal out of it. But essentially the same story. They reported the same facts. It's just one was outrageous and one was like, hey, no big deal, no big deal. Kind of like the opposite now. Anything Trump does, CNN sees it as world-stopping. But Fox is like, it's not that bad. We could do a little better. Same story. It's just we're perceiving it differently depending on which network you watch.
I don't know that I like that example, but okay. I wouldn't give any. I just don't.
You mean the Trump example?
I don't care enough anymore.
Oh, well, that's different.
Right? I mean,
whether you care or not, they're still reporting the story.
I am stuck in apathy, and I see the reporting is basically the same.
Well,
It's
you know what? I feel like a lot of people feel that way.
it's trying to attract dollars.
Yeah.
And
just doing it different ways. Same goal.
And to put your faith in an entity whose core purpose of existence is to maximize profit.
It's basically everything, unfortunately.
No, that's what a corporation is. That's the whole purpose of being in business.
To make money.
To maximize profit. And that's enough for today because I think we're not going anywhere. And we're out of time. Thank you.
Thank you for listening to the Low Fact Podcast. Find us on Stitcher and iTunes. Just search Low Fact Podcast. Find us on Twitter and Instagram at Low Fact Podcast. Send us an email at lowfactpodcast@gmail.com. Find us on YouTube. Search Low Fact. All the links can be found in our About. Also, look for my music on IG and Twitter at AFantasyB.